It says the number of mosquitoes in Minneapolis, Minnesota depends on the June rainfall in centimeters and can be modeled with this function right here. How many centimeters of rainfall will produce the maximum number of mosquitoes? What is the maximum possible number of mosquitoes? Now tell me, what form is this quadratic equation in? And so this is in vertex form. And when you have a quadratic equation in vertex form, you take what will make what's inside the parentheses 0, which is 5. And then the number on the outside will be the second part of your vertex. So 525 is my vertex. Now, here's what we got going on here. We've got a coordinate plane, and we've got a graph, and the graph represents the number of mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes peek out like that, right? And we know that the maximums and minimums of functions happen at the what? At the vertex. And so the vertex is your maximum. So this point right here, 525, tells us something about our mosquitoes. Now, before we answer our questions, they also want to know when the total amounts of rainfall result in 0 mosquitoes. That tells us to take our function and set it equal to what? 0. So I'm going to write negative parentheses r minus 5 squared plus 25 equals 0. And I want to solve that equation. And so we're going to subtract 25 from both sides. And when we subtract 25 from both sides, we get negative parentheses r minus 5 all squared equals negative 25. And now I will divide by negative 1 on both sides because I want to get rid of this negative sign right here. And so those go away. So I have r minus 5 all squared equals 25. Okay, and so now we have this squared right here. And in order, Sarah, for me to get rid of that squared, I'm going to square root both sides because the opposite of squared is square root. And so I have r minus 5 equals, the square root of 25 is 5. And I have r minus 5 equals, the square root of 25 is also negative 5. And so I will add 5 to both sides. So r equals 10. And I will add 5 to both sides. And so r equals 0. So there are my two solutions, right? And so now let's go back up to the question. And I know that my vertex is right there. That's my vertex. And I know that my solutions, my x-intercepts, are at 0 and at 10. So now let's read the question and see if we can answer it. How many centimeters of rainfall will produce the maximum number of mosquitoes? And so they want to know how many centimeters of rainfall will give us the max number of mosquitoes. Well, 5 inches of rain will give us the maximum number of mosquitoes, which is how many? 25 million mosquitoes. So well, here's what we're saying. We're saying when there are 5 inches of rain, which is right here, then we'll have 25 million mosquitoes. If I have like 2.5 inches of rain, I'm going to have less mosquitoes, right? If I have 1 inch of rain, I'm going to have less mosquitoes. What if I have 0 inches of rain? I'll have 0 mosquitoes, right? The reason is if there's a pond, okay, if there's a pond, okay, of water, do y'all see my pond? The mosquitoes lay their eggs in the water, and it has to be standing still water. It can't be moving water, right? Well, if it rains, then there's standing still water, right? But if there's no water, is there anywhere for them to lay their eggs? No. So that's why this graph makes sense. If there is no water, then there are no mosquitoes. If they get 5 inches of rain, the mosquito population is 25 million mosquitoes. Now, why is it that if there are 10 inches of rain, there are no mosquitoes again? And so at 0 inches of rain, there are no mosquitoes. and at 10 inches of rain, there are also no mosquitoes. And you could kind of come up with the hypothesis that maybe too much rain causes the mosquito eggs to float off. And so let's look at our choices here. It says enter the lower amount. 2 amounts of rainfall result in 0 mosquitoes. What's the lower amount? 0 centimeters of rain. And then the higher amount? 10 centimeters of rain. Okay, I'm going to read the question to you. So the problem says, is each number an actual solution, an extraneous solution, or neither to the following equation? And then they give you this equation, and they want to know, are these 4 actual solutions, extraneous solutions, or neither? Now, here's what you cannot do. You cannot do the old MCT deal where you plug 16 in and hope it works. And then you plug -8 in and hope it works. Right? Y'all have done a bunch of problems on state tests where it was A, B, C, D, and you just started plugging numbers in hoping one of them would work. You can't do it that way. You've got to take this equation right here and solve it. So solve the equation now. So the first thing I do to solve this equation is to divide -2 on both sides. Say it.
Divide -2 on both sides.
And so when I divide -2 on both sides, I get square root of 4x squared equals -32. And now I want to get rid of this square root symbol, don't I? In order for me to get rid of a square root, the opposite of square root is to square both sides. So I'm going to square both sides. And so I have 4x squared equals, and you need to type in your calculator, -32 squared. Now, anytime you square something, it's going to be what? Positive and in parentheses. So you get what? 1024. And now remember, we're trying to get x by itself. So now I'll divide by 4 on both sides. And so I have x squared equals 256. And then I'm going to take the square root of both sides. That's what I'll do to get rid of this squared. And I have x equals 16. And the square root of 256 is not just 16, it's also what? So I have x equals -16. Very good. So there are my 2 answers. Now, I need to figure out, are 16 and -16 actual solutions, extraneous, or neither? But now we did not get -8, so it's neither. And we did not get 4, so it's neither. Now, y'all are saying actual, but there's no way for me to know if they're actual yet. I cannot tell just by looking right now whether they're actual or extraneous. Do you know what an extraneous solution is? Huh? An extraneous solution is a solution that you get, but when you plug it into the equation, it does not work. So we got these 2 solutions. Now we need to plug them back into the equation and see if they work. And so I'm going to take 16 and plug it in. So I have -2 times the square root of 4 times 16 squared, and that has to equal not -64, +64. That's what the problem says. Do y'all see right here? -2 square root of 4x squared has to equal 64. And so I've got -2 times the square root of 16 squared is 256 times 4 is 1024. The square root of 1024 is 32. So I've got -2 times 32, and that equals -64. But it was supposed to equal what? +64. So 16 is an extraneous solution. Even though I got it as a solution, it didn't work. It didn't make the equation true, so it's extraneous. Let's plug -16 in. Okay, so where am I going to plug -16? In for x, so I've got -2 times the square root of 4 parentheses -16 squared, and that has to equal 64. And so -16 squared is 256. And 256 times 4 is 1024. So I've got -2 square roots of 1024, which is -2 times 32. which is negative 64. Does that equal 64? No, so negative 16 is also a what? Extraneous solution. So there were no actual solutions in this case.